This step over to preserve 1,000 career rushing yards, but this step over to steal a Greek freak's soul. This get up after a loss. This get down practice before getting down in the game. Here's the crew. Let's go. Greek tragedy.
You can't really explain it. The video shows it. I was in the wrong, and I'm not that type of person. I'm really disappointed and embarrassed to myself.
The Chiefs say that you were not truthful with them.
The Chiefs are right, and I didn't tell them everything.
Has the NFL ever questioned you about that incident?
No, they have not.
Kareem Hunt's words. The league's actions and reactions per reports. The NFL investigated the incident, did not talk to Hunt or the victim in their investigation, instructed the team to not pursue the video, then could not obtain the video in their own investigation, saw it for the first time, along with the Chiefs and the public when TMZ published it. How that strikes you, and how you consider it all, how Hunt handled the interview, how the team handled it all, how the league handled it all. First to you, Mina Khan.
That is hard to watch, the interview, the video. A couple things were said that have resonated with me and left me with more questions. What we showed, him saying, I wasn't interviewed by the NFL. Now, the league said they weren't able to get the video, but we heard those same things with Ray Rice and later found out that while people may not have seen the video on the team, they heard what it contained. Given his disclosure that they didn't even interview him a second time, I questioned the entire investigation. Mm-hmm. He also said, Tony, that he had not sought counseling. Now, the Chiefs were misled. Both sides have said this, but they knew he was involved in 2 altercations. And in August, when they were asked about this, team co-owner and CEO Clark Hunt said, well, we've got a support system in place for him. Given this disclosure, I question that as well. This is a really tricky issue. It's one that the law, in this case it seems, struggles to address beyond the NFL. I don't expect the league to be perfect, but I expect them to show us that they care about women and victims, that they care about making these players better, and that they care about finding the truth. And right now, to me, it seems like they care more about optics than any of those.
A couple points on that, talking about the law, Mina Khan. The reports are Cleveland Police Department did not obtain this video as well because they don't obtain videos that aren't felonies. But on the idea that the league shouldn't be acting in this extrajudicial capacity, that's not their job, what are your thoughts on that?
I think if the league came out and said, look, we're going to not try this anymore, we're not going to try to go where the law doesn't, that would be one thing. But they're kind of trying to have it both ways. They're saying, we can't do this, but we also are going to try, and we're looking for the truth, when at every turn it seems that they have not put forward the maximum effort to do that.
Clinton Yates, your thoughts?
There's a couple of things here. Number one, Hunt in that video did not show well for himself whatsoever. He said, I'm embarrassed by the video, which is not the message I'm looking to hear from someone who, in fact, did something wrong. You should be embarrassed by your actions, if anything, not simply the fact that you were caught. But to Mina's point about this whole process, this, for me, is an opportunity for the NFL, if they really actually want people to believe that they care about the interests of women and victims, is to come out and be more transparent about how exactly these investigations work. Because I think to a normal person to hear, well, we didn't ask them, we didn't ask the police. The question is just, how is that possible? I don't understand. I don't need to get into, the details of whether or not they obtained videos through felonies, this, that, and the third. It just seems like the NFL should be more thorough in general, never mind the Chiefs, and they should let people know how they do that specifically.
Frank Isola?
And Clinton, you're 100% right. They also have the resources, the manpower to go out and get to the bottom of it. It's almost as if they're saying, you know what, as long as nobody else makes a big deal of it, let's just move on. We'll let the player play. And when you see that interview with Lisa Salters, it's all about image rehabilitation. But you know what? He's only sorry about one thing, that he got caught, that this video came out, and he got cut. So he's looking to save his professional career, which has got a lot of money because he's a terrific player. The whole thing is a mess from start to finish. If everyone wanted to get to the bottom of it, they could have. This happened in February. Everything now is happening between Friday and today. The whole thing is a mess, and everyone has to take some responsibility, starting, of course, with Kareem Hunt.
And Bob Ryan?
Well, number one, the rapidity with which he was released, I think, has a lot to do with the fallback from the Reuben Foster issue. No, they don't want to be Fosterized. They want to make sure that they're going to show the world that they're going to do the right thing. Number two, the use of the word decision really infuriates me in all these matters. It's not a bad decision by a young guy. It's a bad element of behavior. It's not a bad decision. Number three, that's not who I am. Young man, that is who you are. Let me speak from personal experience. 15 years ago, I had a verbal indiscretion that resulted in me being suspended. And I was even given a chance at the time to recant, and I was so full of myself at the time that I didn't do it. And I had to learn from that. He has made a horrible mistake in his life. That is who you are. You better go to counseling. You cannot let that happen again. That's my takeaway.
Thank you for that, Bob. Thanks for sharing. Clinton Yates, you want one more response?
I mean, this is also a team that employs Tyreek Hill. So when it comes to what the Chiefs did, you have to think about this more holistically. It's very difficult for me to believe that, well, they just got rid of him because it was the right thing to do, when, in fact, if you look down their roster, they've got other guys that they should.
And Mina Kimes?
Yeah, and when they drafted Tyreek Hill, the Chiefs came out and said, we're going to help him. We're going to make sure he continues to get counseling and work with him. That's why I have this question about Kareem Hunt. When he comes out and says, maybe I'll consider that, how has that not already happened? If the team's role is to help these guys and be a support system, we need to hear that they're actually doing that.
It's a good point. More questions and more answers needed, and maybe we'll get that as this plays out. The Chiefs football team, though, and how they would play football was part of this very complicated reality. That's not to compare it or relate it to the story we just had, but we are going to address the football team now. 37 points, what their average was coming in. 40 points is what they scored yesterday in the 7-point win in Oakland. Clinton, how is KC positioned going into the postseason after releasing Hunt?
I think they're positioned decently well, but where they're going to miss Hunt, in my opinion, is in terms of receptions, not just running out of the backfield. He's got 7 TDs in the air, grabs, touchdown grabs, as many as he has run. So I think that they're going to lose an element, but I don't think he's irreplaceable, which is why they got rid of him.
Frank Isola?
They have been a dynamic offensive team. I don't know how we can sit here and say that it won't impact them. It doesn't mean that they can't overcome it. We've seen this before with teams losing important players late in the season. I still think come playoff time, the big question will be, can Patrick Mahomes now translate into the playoffs? First time that he'll ever go there. First time they'll ever play in a playoff game. I think it'll be a big deal.
Ryan?
We'll see how big it'll be, but let me point this out, that Spencer Ware, his replacement, is not a bad player. He's a pretty good player who was beaten out by a better player, namely this guy. Now, the point is, about a couple of years ago, Ware had 1,500 yards total rushing and receiving, and he's not a bad player, and he could fit into the scheme with a better quarterback than he played with then. So maybe they'll survive this.
Amina Kimes?
This is a team that passes over 60% of the time, 12th in the NFL. Rushing is not core to their offense, but it is essential. They've been very efficient with Hunt. Spencer Ware needs to continue that level of production for them to maintain the offense where it's been.
We've been horrible. Move on. College. You guys want to start with the Final Four? You want to talk Alabama, Georgia? The Final Four it is, Jay. We'll work our way back to the good stuff. Great football, great results, and now a very cumbersome result here. The playoff matchups have spreads that are both in double digits. It's very odd this year. Per the committee, Oklahoma, Ohio State, and Georgia, no one was unequivocally better than the others, so they leaned on protocol, which meant one-loss conference champs with the best loss. Did the committee get it right, Clinton?
I don't think they did. I mean, once again, we can go back to the criteria, but just watch the football. Georgia is obviously the only team in the country that can really give Alabama a real run for it. They've led in like 95% of the 2 games they've played that they've ended up losing as a result of, overtime situations. And it's just so plain to see. Georgia presents the best actual competition for Alabama. All these other criteria might mean something in other people's minds who believe that being undefeated means you have an inalienable right to the national championship. I don't. I think Georgia probably should be.
Frank Isola?
I love that logic. Let them lose their way into the Final Four. Number one, they had a chance to win. They lost. What were you going to do then? Put them at 4, then Alabama has to beat them one more time? Or are they going to leapfrog Notre Dame, which is undefeated? It makes no sense. Oklahoma, Ohio State, it had to be one of those 2 teams. And obviously Ohio State can debate from now until next season that they belong. I actually don't have a problem with what they do.
Bob Ryan?
Georgia can't explain away 20-point loss to LSU, but let me ask the 13 members of the committee the following question. One, yes or no. Who do you think would win a game on a neutral field between Notre Dame and Georgia? And I'd be willing to bet the answer would be Georgia.
So if you think the goal is to find the 4 best teams, which is at least a stated goal, looking for the 4 best teams, it has to be Georgia in your mind.
Yes, if that's the goal. But it's not. Then they say it's the goal, but we know now it is not the goal.
They lost in December.
Times.
If it was about finding the four most talented teams, absolutely Georgia should be in there. According to FPI, they rank in the top 5 in both offense and defense. Oklahoma's defense is 91st. Notre Dame is outside the top 10 in both categories. But it's not just about the most talented team. It's about finding the 4 most successful teams. And Georgia doesn't have the success. Conference championships matter. Losing to LSU matters. I do think the committee got it right by their stated criteria.
Oh, their stated criteria. I, for one, am shocked that we're debating what their stated criteria is after, oh, yeah, and another team happens to be undefeated and not in the top 4. Oh, what a starter there that there is disagreement. Let me ask you this, because it was really an incredible game to watch with incredible storylines, Georgia and Alabama. The Kirby Smart fake punt. I mean, of all the times to run it, this is when you run it. Is that the reason why Georgia is out of the top 4, Frank Isola?
It absolutely helped. You have to punt the ball there, make them have to drive at least 60 yards for a go-ahead field goal. That made no sense. And that's why Kirby Smart, to sit there after the game and say they deserved it. To quote Robert De Niro, you had your chance
and you blew it.
Yeah,
that's how we used to
what
get
it comes
to
down
the show.
to.
Bob, does anybody think that was worth the gamble? Bob Ryan, you?
I don't know of a soul who has discussed it in any public forum today, and I've listened to many of them, who doesn't think it was an egregious error on the part of Coach Smart.
Kimes?
Yeah, it wasn't just the fake punt, which is a bad decision. It was the execution. Putting in Justin Fields as the upback sent a loud signal to Alabama. We're running a fake punt. They knew absolutely it was going to happen. It never would have succeeded.
Lynn Yates.
Yeah, that's the point. It was a bad job and a bad idea at the same time. But if he felt he had to have it in order to get to the game, I can understand why he did it. It was just too cute for the circumstances.
And now, just the best story of the weekend. I mean, we've talked about some stories that aren't so great. It's the best story. That twinkle in Nick Saban's eye, post-game with Jalen Hurts. Was that enough for you to feel the full effect of this Jalen Hurts redemption story, Frank?
I thought it was terrific. Here's a guy that got pulled from the national championship game almost a year later. He's the one coming on the field to lead Alabama to a victory. And here's the thing. Alabama is the big bully on the block. I found myself rooting for them like they were the underdog because you knew it was a great story. And Jalen Hurts leading the comeback. It was
How'd you see Hurts' story, Clint Yates?
I got to say, it was a little bit of a bummer because it felt like it justified every single thing Saban said about keeping people there. I love it for Jalen. I hate what it says for the system overall about when guys want to leave and how they're in that offense.
Bob Ryan, you're shaking your head no.
No, I'm just saying, I never thought about those ramifications at all. I only thought about the moment and what he had done, and it reminded me of Bledsoe replacing Brady in Pittsburgh in 2002, without which they don't win that game and the whole thing doesn't get started.
Oh, man. It's one of those moments that reminds you why you're a sports fan. I mean, Bob, isn't this what you say on Twitter all the time? If you're a sports fan, you got to love this. You got to love Byron Gonzalez on the other side. Stick around. I'm really working on it, Bob. I'm trying to down. Guys solely in the lead. Everybody's got some work to do in buy or sell. Packers firing Mike McCarthy after the home loss to the Cardinals. 13 years, 9 trips to the playoffs, 1 Super Bowl for McCarthy. The report was he wasn't expecting it at all. He's only the second Super Bowl winning coach to be fired by that franchise during a season. So, meaning to start, buy or sell the Packers letting McCarthy go now?
I'm buying it. First, it was the right decision. I think most people agree at this point. His play calling has been a little bit unfairly criticized, but as a situational coach, he's made so many mistakes throughout the years, and it felt like the relationship between him and Rodgers had gotten to a point where it was time to move on. Now, some people have argued that this was an indignity, firing him in the middle of the season. I disagree with that. I actually think it would have been a greater indignity to watch him coach these remaining meaningless games with that disgruntled quarterback, with a disgruntled fan base. This gives both sides the opportunity to rip the Band-Aid, move on, and find Frank McCarthy to find his next job in the NFL.
He's only second to the guy with his name on the stadium in terms of number of games coached. I think he deserves to get a season out in terms of his simple level of self-respect, not to mention what the message it sends to other people who might be trying to come in there. If you're thinking about this being your first coaching opportunity and you knew that the Packers got rid of a guy who's got that much experience and that many wins, I'm not sure I want to walk into that with Aaron Rodgers pouting all over the place.
Oh, so you would pass up on the Green Bay position right now?
No, what I'm saying is that if you know you're only going to get one chance at this job and you walk into a scenario that is that volatile, it might not work out. You might not get another.
Yeah, and the only other Packer coach to win a Super Bowl is the guy that they named the rest stop after on the Jersey Turnpike. So you have that working for you as well. Here's the thing about Mike McCarthy. If you've decided you didn't want him to be your coach anymore, it's time to move on. But you have to look at Aaron Rodgers, some of the things he said, the body language, the way that he went about saying it. Aaron Rodgers being unhappy, and Mina talked about it, this is what ushered out
You're talking
Mike
about Vince
McCarthy.
Lombardi.
The next coach that come in will deal
But you
with it.
forgot a Mike Holmgren Super Bowl there, Frank Isola. How about you, Bob Ryan?
You stepped on my line in advance.
Sorry,
of me. I was
Bob. I'll
gonna
give
say
you the point back. Yeah.
I didn't know Joyce Kilmer coached the Packers. Now, I'm a Jersey guy, exit 9, in case anybody
All
wonders.
right,
Now,
please. Let's talk sports.
right thing to do, because, look, he was a DCW. We all knew it, dead coach walking. They spared everybody concerned 4 tension-filled weeks and many miserable press conferences by letting him go now, getting him out of his misery. He knows he wasn't going to be there. He's a big boy. He's going to get paid. He'll get another job. He's in the network. No tears shed for him. Life has to go on.
Because we went about 3 layers on the
better.
Jersey Turnpike, I just have time for Mina here. Come forward. The idea that McCarthy and Rodgers underachieved, achieved, or overachieved? Where are you on that?
Underachieved, and not just because Rodgers is a Hall of Fame quarterback, he's only won one Super Bowl, because you can point to several playoff games and say Mike McCarthy committed coaching malpractice. The 2014 NFC Championship game, he made so many mistakes. This firing is the culmination of mistakes like that over the years, Tony.
We'll move on. Buy or sell, too. Of all the false starts you've ever seen, that's one of them. Of all the offsides you've ever seen, there were all of them at the end of this game. The most bizarre ending of the week. Have you ever seen giving your opponent back-to-back-to-back chances to beat you? Also, a lot of Phillip Rivers close-ups from NBC in this one. So, Frank, did the win tell you more about L.A., more about the Steelers, more about the refs, or more about Phillip Rivers' pores?
Well, the referees missed some big calls there, but to me, this is more about the Chargers because we've seen this from them before. They go on the road, they play well, but at the end, they blow it. Pittsburgh had come back, tied the game. The Chargers had the ball. Drive down the field, score, kick a field goal, and that's exactly what they did. This team on both sides of the ball and special teams is a dangerous team, and I hope they get a home playoff
and special
game
teams
in that little tiny soccer stadium that they
Bob
play.
Ryan.
The Steelers are engulfed in weird karma right now. I don't even know. This is just craziness right now with them. This is about the Chargers, who are under the radar, and they are no longer under the radar. They must be taken seriously, I think, very much so. And Rivers now, maybe once in his life, if he gets to the playoffs, he'll actually produce in the playoffs. We'll see.
Mina Kimes?
I think the Steelers blew it, not just because of the offside stuff at the end, but on a down-to-down basis. Throughout the game, Tony, I was wondering, why is Keenan Allen so open?
Yeah.
Well, according to NFL Next Gen Stats, he was targeted 9 times and was covered by a linebacker. That's why he was so open. That's why nobody has faith in this Steelers defense in the playoffs every year because of coaching errors like that.
That was a coaching error, then, is what you're saying there. And Tomlin refused to even acknowledge that after the game. Is that right? Do I have that right?
They certainly didn't make any adjustments. I don't know if you want to put it on the DC or Tomlin, but again, we've seen this with the Steelers in the playoffs and their defense.
28.
When you asked last week which team was still good in the AFC that was on the Tier 2, I said the Chargers because of quarterback experience. Phillip Rivers with the 16-point-plus comeback, his 7th of all time, the most in the history of the league. That's why this is about the Chargers.
That's true.
That team is
the 7th of all time. It's an amazing thing he has that many. It's also more amazing he has more children than the number of double-digit comebacks, which is incredible. Speaking of Phillip Rivers, Mina Kimes, 28, as we say goodbye, can you give me the Phillip Rivers face, the full range of emotions in your glass case of emotions? Okay. All right. Yates, you have some work to do there. That's not exactly it.
a lot of work.
Frank Isola, Bob Ryan, for naming rights on a New Jersey Turnpike rest stop. Showdown next.
There we go.
Bob Ryan, Frank Isola stepping over into Showdown. Tom Brady, victory formation, taking the knee but stepping forward so he could still be at 1,000 yards career rushing. Mario Hezonja, RIP formation, his only 2 points, dunking then stepping over Giannis. Mario, quote, honestly, if you're afraid this is not for you. Giannis, quote, next time I'm going to punch him in the nuts. Which step over, overstepped more, Frank?
Mario, those are his only 2 points, and if you heard what Giannis said, they meet December 25th at Madison Square Garden. That'll be a different rendition of the Nutcracker.
Oh, come on. Tom Brady having the prescience to take the forward knee so he stays at 1,000 and show the world. I'm not just a quarterback who can throw. I can run, too.
Yeah, I'm with the Jingle Bells or the Nutcracker, whatever Frank was going. I saw the joke from a mile away. Meanwhile, that is the greatest two-point game in NBA history. If your team wins by 2, you scored only 2, and you did that over Giannis. We'll move on. Show that to Cam Newton dressing like this after throwing 4 interceptions in a 4-game losing streak. David Moore practicing the Macarena before the team did the Macarena. Taylor Decker throwing the TD souvenir ball into the stands, but now he's trying to locate it and is asking for it back. Bob, who gets the mulligan here?
The Macarena is so last decade. You know what they should do if they're going to be cool? They should practice the Charleston. Then I'd really be impressed.
Thank you very much, Bob.
Decker doesn't get a mulligan because you throw the ball into the stands. That is for a fan to keep. He wants it back. I'm not giving it back. How often you get a football? A baseball, one thing. A football, no chance.
Frank Isola, no chance he's giving this showdown back. FaceTime to New York.
Whoa. Hey, a little coaching news. Fred Hoiberg out as the head coach of the Chicago Bulls. I don't know if their management looked at their roster. Not very good. Jim Boylan is in. Also want to congratulate Jeff Van Gundy coaching the U.S. national team into the FIBA World Cup, and he did it mostly with G League players. He's like the stunt double in a Bond movie. He has to jump out of the building, and then the guy that gets up and pretends he did it was Greg Popovich because he'll coach the national team in China this summer. Good job, Jeff.
Frankie Ice with the win. We'll see you tomorrow.